Hi, welcome back. Now this video is meant for my students to do their correction. For those who are looking at this for the first time, I hope this helped you too. And to use this best, you may want to just pause the video first, try the questions before you carry on playing it. And let's get started. So the table shows the features of 5 different flowers, so A, B, C, D, E. Flower A has purplish color, gives off the smell of rotting flesh. Flower B has large feathery stigmas that hangs out from the flower. Flower C has anthers that are exposed, do not have colorful petals. Flower D is blue, produces sweet nectar. Flower E, red and yellow, has sticky pollen grains. Which of the following flowers are the most likely to be wind pollinated? Now, first thing, do not be confused with wind, seeds dispersed by wind. This is about pollination, not about dispersal. For pollination, there are usually two kinds, by animals and by wind. If they're dispersed by animal, even I use the wrong term, right? If the pollination is by animals, that means that the flowers need to be able to attract the animals in the first place. How do I attract it? By either using very bright colors, and the bright colors come from the brightly colored petals, or with very strong smell. And the strong smell can be a pleasant, sweet smell, can be smelly, but it got to be strong. So animals are attracted to by these two mechanisms that the flowers can give off. Either they're brightly colored or they have strong smell. Now, what about flowers that are not brightly colored? Flowers that are really small and can't really be insect pollinated. Then they can be pollinated by wind. And the features of these would be, usually the flowers are dull in color. That gives you an indication that it is not insect pollinated. Secondly, the stigma and the anther are likely to be hanging out. Why? They can't be blocked by the wind. So if this is like the anther and these are petals, the anther will be inside the petals. So if the wind were to blow against it, all right, these will be those that are pollinated by insects. So petals are like blocking it. But if it's going to be wind pollinated, the anther will be sticking out. So when wind blows, wind can blow against the anther and bring the pollen grains out. Similarly, if this part is a stigma, in order to catch the pollens coming in the wind, it has to be sticking out and spread out, like a fan or a feather. And then when wind blows against it, it can carry pollen grains that can land on the sticky stigma. So let's take a look at the options right now. A has very strong smell, has certain color. Strong smell tells me this is likely to be animal pollinated. So that's not the answer. Anything with A wouldn't be the answer. So A, 1 and 4 will be out. Large feathery stigmas that hangs out. Remember I talked to you about the stigma part hanging out to catch these pollens in the wind. So B is likely to be the answer. Alright, so it's either 2 or 3. Anthers are exposed. Exposed means that they are open to the wind to blow at it. And the petals are dull, right? Are not colorful. So likely to be C. So again, 2 or 3. How about D? It produces sweet nectar. Now this will attract insects, isn't it? If it's sweet nectar. But it is not about animal pollinated. It is about wind pollinated. And it has this bright color. So I don't think this is the case. So D is out. Let's check E. E has nothing to do with it. All the stigmas will have sticky parts. Okay. And if it's sticky, means they're going to stick onto the body of animals. It's likely to be insect pollinated or animal pollinated. So by looking at this and by eliminating the options, we have answer 2 as the answer. Okay. For those in my class, please make sure you write down all this. I will be checking through your corrections when I take it back. Alright, please make sure you take down all these annotations. Just pause the video and do so. Now, questions become tougher when they throw in a graph. So you need to understand how a graph works. So study the graph below. Seed A and B are two different types of seeds with different dispersal method. Now, typically, the seeds that are dispersed by wind can travel a much further distance compared to seeds that are dispersed by, let's say, explosive action. So, for instance here, right? Number of seeds dispersed and speed of the wind. So look at the speed of the wind first. So let's say if use numbers is easy to tell. I just use some random numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. If the speed of wind is 0, then they disperse the seeds. Number is nearby a few. For seed A is this number. For seed B is slightly more than seed A. Let's say I give some random number again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just for us to understand better what does it mean by larger number, smaller number. If the speed of the wind increases to, let's say, 4, that increases the number of seed A that's being dispersed. If the speed of wind increases to 4, seed A, 6 of seeds A can be dispersed. But how about seed B? There's no change. Whether the wind speed is 0, 2 seeds being dispersed. Wind speed is 4, it's still 2 seeds being dispersed. So this is definitely not wind dispersed. Because it doesn't matter to it. Whether there's wind or no wind, the number of seeds dispersed remain the same. But seed A is affected. So seed A might have some structures like either a wing-like structure or something like your feathery-like structure in order to catch this wind and be carried away. Again, a reminder to those in my class, take note of this annotation. So which of the following correctly shows what seed A and B are likely to be? So A is likely to be something that is wing-like or feathery-like. So fibrous? No. Hot? No. Fine hair? Yes. This fine hair will catch wind. So it could be this. Wing-like? Yes. Could be wing-like structure. Then B now. B is not wind dispersed. So it should not have any of those wing-like structure or fine hair. So I'm down to either 3 or 4, right? So let's skip to 3 and 4 straight away. Number 4 says it has fine hair, but seed B should not be affected by wind. So this will be affected by wind. So this is wrong. Left with this. This is by animals. Sweet, juicy flesh attract animals to eat it. So this will be the answer for question 2. Answer is 3. Next one, the diagram shows the parts of a human and plant reproductive system. For those in my class, we just started on the human reproductive system, so you are allowed to try this question one more time. If you got this wrong, not to worry, because we just started learning this just yesterday. Which of the following parts in the plant reproductive system is similar to the function of part G in the human reproductive system? So we are talking about comparing the male and female parts of the plant as well as animal. So this A here will be the female part, and this A is the stigma. That's the female part. B here is the anther. That is the male part. And this contains these pollen grains, which are the male reproductive cells. Alright. D here points to the ovules, which will be the female reproductive cell. How about for this is the male reproductive system. Now, part G is the testis. It contains sperm, and sperm is actually the male reproductive cell in the human reproductive system. So you're asking which of the plant system, which part of it, which part A, B, C, D is similar to the function of G in the human reproductive system. G is the male reproductive cell, and in this case here, D is a female. B here is the anther. Anther contains the male reproductive cell. G is a testis that contains the male reproductive cell. So you can see, right? The anther in the plant has a similar function to the testes in the human. So G is similar to A. So answer, so it's similar to B, answer. So answer is 2. Next one. In the life cycle of flowering plant, this one we practice quite a lot in class. So after before germination, the seed must have been dispersed first. Then it can germinate. Right? The seed must reach the ground, so it can have the condition such as the right temperature, oxygen, and water for it to germinate. And germinate in the adult plant, but once they have flowers, you can start to do this thing called pollination. After successful pollination, then there can be fertilization. So using this, you can see the answer is actually 4. C will be seed dispersal. Then A is pollination. And B is fertilization. Answer is 4 for this. Okay, next one, question 5. Again, comparing the plant and human reproductive system. Once again, this is a common kind of questions for testing this topic. They will ask you to compare the plant and the animal, or in this case, human reproductive system. Which of the following statements about the labeled parts are correct? Number 2 is correct, which is what? C is the ovary, and ovary contains the female reproductive cell, which is called the ovule. And in this case here, E is also called the ovary, right? And it contains the egg cells, which is the female reproductive cells. So C and E are similar. That's the answer for this. Now, what about the wrong one? B contains the male reproductive cell. Yes, it's correct for B. Then say D. D is not containing. This is a female reproductive system. So D cannot have anything to do with male. Okay, so that's why D here is wrong. If you have chosen answer 3, what's wrong with 3? 3 says A and B are both the male reproductive parts. Again, this is wrong because this is the female part, the stigma. This is not the male part. This is the female part, not the male part. So therefore, when you say both are the male part, that's definitely wrong. Next one, they say B and C, they are the female reproductive parts of the flower. B is the male part, it's not the female part. So to say that B is containing of the female parts, that's wrong for this. Okay, now let's go on. So answer for this is 2. Let's go to the next question. The table shows the characteristics of plants A and B. A shows the characteristics that plants have. Alright, A is dispersed by wind, but it is very, very important. It does not say reproduced by seed. They left it blank. This part about reproduced by seed, they left it blank, which means this A is not a flowering plant. A is not a flowering plant. Because only flowering plants will have your pollination, fertilization, and then when that happens, you have your fruit and seeds. B is a flowering plant, but not A. So what kind of plant, but it is a plant, what kind of plant is it if it's not a flowering plant? Therefore, it must be a non-flowering plant for A. And so what is it that is dispersed by wind that helps A to reproduce? That must be spores. Example of plants like this will be ferns and mosses. So if I look at non-flowering, Y has spores. Y must be plant A. So plant A must be Y. Next one, plant B must be a flowering plant that has wing-like structures or feathery-like structure for the seeds. So it's dispersed by wind. So B, flowering plant, dispersed by wind. Parachute-like structure, also help you to catch wind and carry away by the wind. So that will be W. And for plant B, that will be W. So answer for that is 4. Plant B is not dispersed by animals, so it cannot be sweet and juicy fruits. It's dispersed by wind. It doesn't need to be sweet and juicy. So if you've chosen 2 as an answer, then this is wrong. Okay, let's go to the next one now. The following statement shows a comparison between the sperm of an animal and the pollen grains of a flower. the sperm is the male reproductive cell, and the pollen grain are also the male reproductive cells. This is the male reproductive cell of animals. This is the male reproductive cell of flowers. A reminder to my students, please make sure you are taking notes of these annotations. So which of the following are correct? Both becomes a seed. No. For animal, the sperm does not become a seed, so A is wrong. If A is wrong, you see, wrong, wrong, wrong. You already got the answer. Answer is 4. But just to understand it better, B, both contain information that is passed down to the next generation. Correct. So both the male reproductive cell in the pollen grains and the sperm will pass on characteristics that belong to the male, belong to the particular organism, whether it's a flower or the human. For those in my class who watched the Where Did Willy Go, the sperma will be carrying the characteristics of Mr. Brown, and that is passed on to the child Edna. How about C? Both are found in the male reproductive parts of the organism. Yes, that's true. Male reproductive cells. Both are important in fertilization process. Definitely, without the male reproductive cell, there is no fertilization. Okay, so fertilization is the fusing of the male and the female reproductive cell. They must come together. So B, C, D are correct. Next one. John conducted an experiment and removed one part of the flower. One part, either it's A, B, C, or D. After removing that one part, the flower did not produce any more seeds. No? And seeds comes from ovule, right? And how did ovule become a seed? It must be fertilized first. To be fertilized, it means that the pollen tube must have reached it. So there must be some pollination happening first. And for pollination to happen, there must be a stigma to receive the pollen grains. So when we remove part A, the stigma, no more pollen grain can land on the stigma because there's no more stigma. No pollen tube can grow down. Of course, there's no fertilization and there's no seeds. A is the answer if you cut off the stigma. Now, what if you remove the anther? Well, there can still be pollen grains in a wind somehow, or from the other flower, or from other insects. They carry the pollen grain from another flower over here, touch it, and the pollination can still happen. Remove the petals, no problem. The bee or butterfly that flies over here, and the body could be carrying the pollen grains, and it could still land on the stigma. This part is not in your syllabus, you don't have to worry about this, but this is nothing to do with pollination, right? So, of course, it doesn't affect it. So the answer for this, you remove part A. That's answer 1. Now for this, the diagram shows a cross-section of two flowers, X and Y. Alright, so they chop it off. You can see here, the petals are much taller and larger than the stigma, much taller and larger than the anthers here and the filament. In other words, this cannot be this. The pollination here is not by wind, because wind will be blocked by the petals. So the pollination here is definitely by animals. Animals must nestle inside here, the bee or the butterfly, in order to reach the nectar below. Then the body will brush against the anther and stigma. And that's how the pollination happens. This one, you notice the anther is hanging outside the petals. And the stigma is also hanging outside, protruding outwards. In these kind of cases, it will be wind pollinated. So based on the diagram, which flower does not depend on animals? So the first thing is your claim. The claim must be correct. If you choose X, it will be wrong straight away. If you choose Y, correct, but no marks. Okay. Now you must, so the first thing is now you must state the possible method of pollination for this flower and give this. So there are a few questions here, right? First question, based on the diagram, which flower does not depend on animals? My claim is Y. Second question, state the possible method of pollination. Y is, so my answer is Y is wind pollinated. Okay, so if I say it's wind pollinated, this part here answer this request in the question. State the possible method of pollination. Wind pollinated. This part will give me half a mark. Okay. Now I must give the evidence. So how do I explain? Giving a reason here means I must explain now. To explain this, I gave the evidence in my reasoning. How? I first state I noticed that these anther are hanging out. The anther of Y is hanging out. Very good observation. And this is a clue that explains, that gives you the hints that this flower is being pollinated. How to explain it? If it's hanging out, then it can catch the pollen that is carried by the wind. This part talks about the wind pollination. Okay, so you can mention either the wind pollination here, or you mention it here, pollen carried by wind. So how do you get your full 1 mark? You either get a half mark here for wind pollination, or pollen carried by wind, half mark here. These two half mark is the same half mark. And this half mark here is for the evidence that you have given. The 1 mark, you got it by giving the evidence and the reason. Now, if you only state things like this, oh, it's Y, it's wind pollinated, that means you're only answering which flower does not depend on animals. You are also answering possible method of pollination. But there was no explanation. So from this part, right, I hope students, you understand that this one question has actually 3 parts to it. And you must answer all 3 parts to get the full marks. You must answer all 3 parts of the question to get the full marks. Now, if your answer is only Y and there's nothing else, that means you're only answering the claim part. Which flower does not depend on animals? You didn't go on to give the possible method of pollination. You also did not give the explanation. So of course, you'll get a tick, but you'll get no marks for this. I hope that message rings in your head for the rest of your PSLE life, your primary school life. After a mango flower is fertilized, the fruit and seeds develop. Which part of the flower develop into the seeds? Actually, here there should be only one S, no S, because a mango flower only have 1 ovule becomes 1 seed. How many mangoes you've seen has more than 1 seed? Mangoes only have 1 seed, okay? So which part of the flower develops into the seed? The ovule. That's why my answer here is singular. Ovule becomes a seed. A mango fruit can change from green to yellow as it ripens. Now, notice green to yellow. How will this benefit the plant? Now, green means the same color as the leaves. It's hard for animals to see the mango fruit if the fruit is green and the leaves are green. So how do you attract animals towards it? You make sure the fruit is brightly colored and it stands out from far. So if the fruit is of a different color and is brightly colored like yellow against the green background of the leaves, then of course from afar animals can see it, they can recognize, oh, that's my sweet and juicy mango fruit. It has ripened. Let's go and get some and eat some. So this will benefit the plant because the plant wants to have the seed dispersed, so the seed can germinate, can grow, and can continue its kind so it doesn't go extinct. So that benefits the plant. The bright yellow color attracts pollinators to it. Why is it a benefit? So they can eat the fleshy fruit and disperse the seed. Pause and take note of the answer. And let's go to the next one. Josh observed the cross-section of 2 flowers, X and Y, from different plants. Okay. Again, you notice this one, the petals here. Notice here there are many ovules. Plural. Here, only 1 ovule. Singular. Now, this fruit here, fruit A, has multiple seeds. Many seeds. And you learn that ovules, when fertilized, will become seeds. 1 ovule becomes 1 seed. Many ovules becomes many seeds. So therefore, which flower, again, 1 question, 2 parts here. Which flower do you think fruit A is developed from? They're asking you for the claim. I'll give the claim is from flower Y, and that is correct, but that has 0 mark. Let's explain the answer. Usually the explanation must come with 2 parts, your evidence and your reasoning. If it's a 1 mark question, the 1 mark is split between the evidence and the reason. Fruit A has many seeds. Right here. And flower has many ovules, right? That's an observation. So what if you can observe fruit A has many seeds? And the reasoning is, these many seeds developed from the many ovules of flower Y. You see here? So to answer this, to get the full 1 mark, you need to give both the evidence and the reason. Evidence is usually your observation from either the graph or diagram, mix of observation and some comparison. In this case here, you observe this. Next one, suggest why having many seeds is an advantage to the plant or fruit A after dispersal. Advantage means it's a good thing to the plant. So what's the advantage after dispersal? Remember, plants want to disperse their seeds because they want the seeds to germinate. They want the seeds to grow into adult plants. If there's just one seed and the seed is damaged or chewed up by the animal or thrown into a place where it cannot grow, like thrown into water, if you throw a mango seed in water, the seed will just rot, it won't grow. Then of course, then it defeats the purpose of trying to reproduce and not go extinct. However, if there are many seeds, some of the seeds can be eaten up, some of the seeds can be trampled upon, but there will still be seeds remaining that can still grow into adult plants. That's why having many seeds increase the chances of some of them germinating and becoming adult plants. So having many seeds increases the chances of some of them germinating and becoming adult plants. So they can continue their kind and they will not go extinct. Alright? We are finishing. Okay, just a couple more questions. A group of students found flower X in the school eco garden. They tried to find out how flower X disperses its seeds. They studied the flower and the fruit and wrote down the following. Fruit is small, with fleshy, with smooth skin. Flowers have sticky pollen grains and colorful petals. This tells you colorful petals are seed dispersal. It's by animal pollination. It's by animal pollination. When you see colorful petals, means animal pollination. Fruits have many small soft seeds. Small seeds means it can be swallowed. Flowers have filaments that are shorter than the petal. What does it mean? These are the filaments, right? These are the petals. Filaments shorter than petals. Which means if wind were to blow against this flower, the wind will not blow against the anther. Pollen grains will not be blown away. So this is not wind pollinated. Definitely. Alright, now I took photos of the flower and the seeds. So based on the information above, name a structure of the flower which enable it to be pollinated by insects. We know it's not wind pollinated. So how can I explain? We can talk about either this structure or this structure. I chose this one because it's easier for you to answer. It has colorful petals. Remember, this one question has two parts. First, you must name a structure. So I name a structure, colorful petals. Next part, explain your answer. Explain. Colorful petals attract pollinators. You must have both parts to get the full 1 mark. Otherwise, it's just half a mark here, half a mark here. I hope now for students who are getting like partial mark for your open-ended question, you understand why you're not getting a full marks. Because you're not giving everything that is requested and required in the question. Next, based on the information above, which is the most likely method by which the seeds are dispersed? How about dispersal, right? So here we must look at the seed and the description here. The seeds are small. Usually they talk about small and hard or indigestible seeds. But in this case here, the words indigestible didn't come up. It was just small seeds. So I'll talk about small, right? It is by animals. Why? The fruit is also fleshy fruit. So I say it's by animals. Why? The small seeds can be easily swallowed and passed out when animals pass out their waste. That's one answer. Another answer can use will be using this part about the fleshy fruit. You can also answer, or you can answer, right? The fleshy fruit attracts animals to eat them. After which, they disperse the seeds randomly. Animal dispersal is always random. So it can be the fleshy fruit attracts animals to eat them. Pardon my handwriting, okay, students? After which they disperse the seeds randomly. You can see how I write when I'm brushing, or how I write when I have more time on my hand. Alright, let's go on. Last two questions. Now, for those in my class, you'll get to see these African tulip seeds today. We will get to try this out. It's not easy to find. Diagram shows the fruit of plant Z. Is from African tulip. It's a very special way of dispersal because there are two ways of dispersal. The pod shape tells you it's dispersed by splitting, and the wing-like structure tells you it's dispersed by wind. So this one has two ways of dispersal. Very smart, this plant. So by explosive action, then when seeds are sprayed out, it can still be carried by the wind. It's awesome, right? That's why it can be dispersed over a long distance. The seeds of plant Z are dispersed by two methods. One of the methods is by splitting. So I told you about the splitting one. So now you must give the other one, which is by wind. Just need to state. Once you explain, no explanation required. Just state the method of dispersal by wind. Enough to get 1 mark. No need to write your explanation because it's not required. Now the second part requires you to explain. Explain how the wing-like structures help the seed to be dispersed by the method above. This part is an explanation. Wind carries the seed far away from the parent plant, as the wing-like structure catches the wind. So if you talk about wing-like structure, you must explain, the words wing-like structure must appear in your answer. As you how wing-like structure help the seed, you must talk about wing-like structure, catch the wind, disperse far away from the parent plant. These are the key words you must use to show you understand this concept. Next one. Now, this part, many of you forgot to do this. We already bold the question words here. Complete the bar graph to show the average distance seed of plant Z can travel from the parent plant when it's dispersed by the second method. So if by splitting only, the distance from the parent plant means it is the parent plant. By splitting, it's just around the parent plant. Here, this distance. Let's say this is 10 meters. This will be 10 meters away from the parent plant. But if it's by wind, and wind can carry further away, it should be further away. Say here, for example, further away from the parent plant. And therefore, the graph here should be higher than the one by splitting. So I expect to see a bar graph that's higher than this bar graph, by the second method, which is by wind. If you forget to draw this, of course, you get no marks for this. Last part here, explain how seed dispersal benefit plants. Benefit means it's good for plants. This is so why do plants not want the seeds to be around the parent plant? Because there'll be competition, there'll be overcrowding. So you must answer in two parts. Firstly, talk about reduces overcrowding. How is that an advantage? This is not enough to write this, children, is not enough. How does reducing overcrowding helps? Because that will reduce overcrowding. It will also reduce the competition for three things: light, minerals, and water. I put this here because it's a very common mistake. Remember our LMW, okay? Light, minerals, and water. So when the seeds are far apart from the parent plant, they will compete less for light, minerals, and water with the parent plants. Right? And that's the end. So I expect you to complete your corrections and hand it in to me in the next science lesson. For those who are watching this, either from my previous students, well, a shout out to you. All the best to you for your PSLE preparation. Take care. Goodbye.